Welcome to this explainer. Today we're jumping right into a totally fascinating paradox from ancient wisdom. And honestly, it might just be the absolute time-tested cure for the massive burnout epidemic we're all seeing right now. We literally spend our entire lives endlessly chasing results, right? But what if that very chase is exactly what's holding us back?
I mean, it feels totally counterintuitive to how we operate today, doesn't it? We are practically hardwired to set these rigid goals, completely obsess over KPIs, and, let's be real, tie our entire self-worth to the final result. But we really need to ask ourselves a tough question here. Is obsessing over success, over the so-called fruits of our labor, actually the exact thing making us miserable, super anxious, and, ironically, way less effective at what we do?
You can see the stark contrast in how we approach absolutely every single day. On one side, you've got the burden of outcomes. When your mind is completely fixated on the future result, it breeds anxiety, leads straight to burnout, and just creates misery. Why? Because you're trying to control the uncontrollable. But then, on the flip side, we have the freedom of process. By shifting our focus entirely to the work itself, we unlock this incredible peace, laser-like focus, and ultimately true excellence. So, how do we actually make that shift?
Let's get into Section 1, The Anchor, Chapter 2, Verse 47. We're unpacking the ultimate framework for action here.
Diving into the source text, we hit one of the most profound, globally recognized verses in the entire Bhagavad Gita. This single verse gives us a total framework for how to act in the world without being completely crushed by it. It's often recited as karmanye vadakaraste ma paleshu kadachana, and it explicitly lays it out. Your right is to work only, but never to the fruit thereof. This is a definitive boundary line, folks. It's telling us that our jurisdiction, our actual area of control, stops exactly at our actions. The results, the fruits, those are completely outside our control, so they're really none of our business.
The really crucial takeaway here is that this one single verse gives us 4 incredibly practical steps to reframe how we handle our daily duties. First off, you absolutely have a fundamental right and a duty to take action. Second, you explicitly do not have a right to the outcome, the fruit. Third, because you don't own that outcome, you definitely shouldn't make the fruit the entire motive for your action. And fourth, and I love this because it's a brilliant safeguard, don't let this detachment make you lazy. You cannot attach yourself to inaction either.
And just to be crystal clear on that fourth point, giving up on the outcome absolutely does not mean just quitting your job or walking away from your responsibilities. As Chapter 3, Verse 4 points out, simply stopping your actions isn't going to bring you perfection or freedom. You can't just lay on the couch all day and claim you're spiritually detached, right? The magic actually happens inside the arena of action, not by running away from it.
Moving on to Section 2, The Trap of Expected Outcomes. We'll look at why expected outcomes breed misery and steal our peace.
So this really builds into an understanding of exactly why our natural, ingrained instinct to chase results is such a devastating psychological trap. The text gets super direct in Chapter 2, Verse 49, saying, "Poor and wretched are those who are instrumental in making their actions bear fruit." Now, I know that might sound a bit harsh to our modern ears, but the text is throwing up a huge warning flag here. Being driven entirely by selfish motives and expected outcomes leaves us spiritually, mentally, and emotionally bankrupt. When your happiness is held hostage by some future result, you're basically choosing a life of wretchedness.
To really drive this home, the text uses this incredibly striking metaphor in Chapter 2, Verse 67. And it so perfectly captures what anxiety and outcome obsession actually feel like. Just picture a small boat out on the water, completely at the mercy of a sudden, violent gale. When our mind attaches itself to the constantly changing winds of success, failure, praise, or criticism, those sense objects, it blows our mental boat completely off course. The verse says it takes away our discrimination. This means we literally lose our clear judgment. We lose our ability to make sound, rational decisions in the present moment. Focusing on those uncontrollable fruits acts exactly like that violent storm. And wow, the cascading effects of this storm are severe. Just one verse prior, verse 66, lays out a pretty grim reality. Without controlling this outcome-driven mind, we suffer a total loss of reason. We lose the ability to focus on any kind of higher purpose or to do truly deep work. We suffer an absolute lack of peace. And ultimately, as the text asks, how can there be happiness for one lacking peace of mind? It basically becomes completely impossible to find joy. Okay, Section 3. Equanimity and true yoga. This is about finding unshakable balance in the storm.
So if outcome obsession is the disease, if it's that storm blowing our boat off course, what on earth is the cure proposed by this ancient text? How do we actually find our anchor? Well, the text defines yoga in a way that might actually surprise you. It's not presented here as a physical posture or, stretching on a yoga mat. Instead, it is defined as the supreme psychological state of equanimity. It is maintaining a perfectly balanced mind, an evenness of temper, whether you encounter massive success or absolutely crushing failure.
Looking directly at the original instruction, it explicitly tells us to perform your duties established in yoga, renouncing attachment and even-tempered in success and failure. This right here is the core practice. You still do the work, you still show up every day, but you firmly, decisively renounce your emotional attachment to how things turn out. You find your balance entirely in the present action, not in the future result.
And the promised reward for maintaining this level of equanimity? It is absolutely massive. As chapter 2, verse 65 states, with this placidity of mind, all of a person's sorrows come to an end. The intellect of someone who achieves this tranquil, process-oriented state becomes firmly established. You basically become unshakable. That gnawing anxiety of the unknown future, it just simply dissolves. Let's look at section 4, excellence in process, skill in action through detachment.
Now, I know what you might be thinking right about now. If I don't care about the result, isn't my work going to suffer? Won't I lose my competitive edge entirely? Let's bring this right back to your daily life to see how this ancient philosophy actually creates modern, top-tier high performers. Chapter 2, verse 50 reveals this completely counterintuitive secret. Skill in action lies in the practice of this yoga of equanimity. Just let that sink in for a second. Shedding your desperate attachment to the result doesn't make you lazy at all. It actually makes you vastly more skilled at the action itself. Think about it. When your mental bandwidth isn't constantly being drained by worrying about the outcome, 100% of your energy goes straight into the execution of the task.
Building on that idea, chapter 3, verse 19 explicitly commands us to do our duty efficiently. It says, therefore, go on efficiently, doing your duty without attachment. This completely shatters the myth that detachment means apathy or just not caring. True detachment is literally about high performance. It is about showing up, doing your absolute best work efficiently and with total unbroken focus, and then just letting the chips fall where they may.
So, as we kind of summarize what we've learned from these texts today, you can see this incredibly stark choice we all face every single morning. On one hand, we can choose action with a selfish motive, endlessly chasing the fruit, which the text calls inferior and wretched, and which absolutely ties us down to chronic anxiety. Or, we can choose action in equanimity. By focusing purely on the process, we shed the mental burdens of good and bad outcomes, we find immense peace, and we become incredibly skillful in our daily lives. Burnout or masterful peace. The framework is entirely in our hands.
I'm going to leave you with this really provocative thought to ponder today. Look at the projects, the relationships, and the big goals in your life right now. If focusing on the fruit is truly acting like a storm, if it's out there stealing your skill, your focus, and your joy, what is the one result you need to stop worrying about right now so you can finally get back to doing the truly great work you are meant to do? Take some time to think about that. Apply the wisdom of the process, and I will catch you in the next explainer.